Hey everyone, it is Jaime Jo Wright here at Mad Like Musings, and I'm super excited because I have Holly Varni with me. She's a Christie Award finalist, and she's
Thank
a
you.
writer
Thank you.
for Revell Publishing, and she writes the best books that completely envelope a whole entire generation that we need to talk about today.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a delight. You're a sweet, sweet friend with great wisdom always.
Oh boy, I don't know about that. It's the coffee. We'll blame it on the coffee and Jesus. I'm okay. I'll pass that credit on. I don't know about wisdom, but my family might argue with you on that one. So, for readers who are just tuning in, I have to give you some backstory because it's kind of fun and kind of funny. But Holly and I had this conversation, what, a month ago or a month
Yeah.
and a half ago?
Yeah.
And it was a great conversation. Y'all should have
An
been
hour and a
there.
half. We
It
just
was
went off in every direction.
every
Yeah.
direction. It was so good.
Mhm.
And I was so excited. I even uploaded it. A few of you might have found it before it magically disappeared from the airwaves because I get an email from Holly going, is there sound in this? I don't hear. And I go in and the whole track of Holly's beautiful voice telling us all about her book was essentially missing. And so this is our redo. And we have to remember everything we
Um,
talked about.
Everything. And I said I was up for it. When you
Yes.
asked for a re-record, I was like, it's just like sitting down and having coffee with a friend. Of course I would. Of
Right,
course.
right. It's so fun. And we've already been talking for like 45 minutes.
No.
We just hit the record button. So everything we talked about stays between us because now you can eavesdrop.
Super secret.
Super secrets, all the funs. All right, but we are here to talk about your book that
Okay.
has been released. It's available now. It's called The Blooming of Delphinium, and it has a great
Yes.
cover. It's a
Isn't
great
it pretty?
cover.
It's
It's
so
gorgeous.
beautiful. I
Absolutely
love it. I
gorgeous.
love the purple in it. I love all the flowers. And
Mhm.
it is the second to the
On Moonberry
Moonberry
Lake.
Lake series.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it.
I know. Isn't it so relaxing? So the
It
first
is.
one, the first one was the introduction to the Moonberry world
Okay.
and all the core characters, which I call the core characters.
Right.
And then the even books the even numbered books in my series are the side characters that you meet in town. And so Delphinium Hayes, which is the protagonist in The
Okay.
Blooming of Delphinium, she was introduced in On Moonberry Lake and her flower shop, which is called Delphinium Flora Emporium on Main Street in downtown Moonberry Lake.
I love that. I
So we
love
have
that.
this sweet book
Mm-hmm.
and a recap again. So Delphinium Hayes has
Mm-hmm.
a special gift where she can smell the goodness or wickedness of a person by their scent. And
Oh boy.
everybody emits a scent. And this isn't a supernatural book or anything,
Right.
but I came
No.
across this
Right.
study where toddlers they took the t-shirts from their mothers and
Mm-hmm.
they just mixed them up and threw them in a heap in the center of the room, put a bunch of toddlers around it, had them crawl to it, and each baby picked out the correct t-shirt.
I believe it. I believe
I
it.
absolutely believe that. And one of the things that I fell in love with my husband was, oh my gosh, he smelled good. I just swooned. And it's like this natural, like, and I just knew, like, I am to be your mate. Like, I was so drawn to him. I thought he smelled heavenly. I still do. It was
Okay.
between his voice
Yeah.
and his scent. I
Yep.
was gone. I was
Yep.
gone. It was like the fastest engagement anyone has ever seen
That's
because
awesome.
I was like, I have found you after all these people.
Yes.
And so I put that in because everybody emits a scent, and I
Mm-hmm.
went down a little wormhole that floral scents, not only we all know that like like the color of roses, this one means friendship, this one means fiery
Right.
passion, this one means love. It's
Mm-hmm.
like different degrees of love for roses, but every single flower, every single herb, everything their scent has a meaning to it. So when I started researching it, and some meant you're asking for forgiveness, some you're asking
Mm.
for prayer, others you're a team player, you're exuberant, you're outgoing, you're introverted, you're a
Mm-hmm.
storyteller, you're creative. I could not believe the meaning when I looked through all of these floral encyclopedias. And so I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have all the characters in the book have a scent that kind of
Mm-hmm.
supported this? So
Mm-hmm.
Delphinium Hayes has this wonderful flower shop where she has fairy houses and lotions and floral little embroidered napkins and candles and everything that you'd want in the most magical flower shop. And she is not a great businesswoman, though, and she's losing her
Mm.
business and she's
Ooh.
trying to save it and not sure how. But at the same time, she was friends with a senior,
Mm-hmm.
and he's decided to bring his buddies over because they're kind of staging a protest at the assisted living center where they're
Love it.
living. And
Love it.
they're not allowed to gamble, but he's like, we're going to go gamble in your walk-in fridge in the back. And then they started bringing more and more seniors. And before you know it, they have overtaken her shop in their rebellion against the nursing home. And then I thought, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if it was the director of the nursing home that comes to her shop and is like, why are all of my people, all these
Yes.
residents coming to your shop? And it's a very cute story in that I wanted to honor the senior population. And I
Yeah.
did the same thing in On Moonberry Lake, where whenever you pick up a Holly Varni book, what you're going to know is that there is a young person who is in trouble, has screwed up their life, is
Mm-hmm.
alone,
Mm-hmm.
is something is amiss, and the only ones with the answers are the seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to shine a light on our senior population, which is now and will continue to be the largest demographic in our country.
Right.
And they are being ignored. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to shine a light on seniors that they have spirit and energy and wisdom and creativity and ideas, and
Mm-hmm.
they thrive with company. They thrive with people including them in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of putting them off to the side and having them go quietly, away,
Right.
I want to involve them more. And so
Mm-hmm.
I truly actively put them in the best light where they're spunky and sassy and sarcastic, but the energy that they bring to Delphinium, they change her life. And
Mm-hmm.
in helping her save the shop, which they've now decided to take on as their own personal
I love that.
project. They also help teach the director of the nursing home, this is how you should talk to seniors. This is how you should
Yeah.
listen to them. This is what you should be including us in, because I think the saddest thing in this generation that we are doing currently is they suffer from boredom and depression
Mm-hmm.
because we are excluding them from our everyday. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that is my heart. I've been a hospice volunteer for
Mm-hmm.
years and years and years. I believe that it's first and foremost my calling to sit with the dying.
Mm-hmm.
And I began writing these books to entertain them. So the books, there's no darkness, there's no violence, there's
Mm-hmm.
just humor. And when I say
Mm-hmm.
humor, there is absurd humor in this. And I am fine with being called the writer of the ridiculous because I'm just going for a smile and I'm going to distract you. I think what we need more than anything right now is a distraction so that we can take a breath, whether
Yeah.
you're experiencing physical or emotional pain.
Right.
And I've experienced this in my own life. And I believe this is where the idea for this series, but all of these characters flood me, is when I was in my saddest or loneliest or darkest moments,
Mm-hmm.
a character would come to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is truly a gift from God. I believe that writing is the communion with the Holy Spirit in itself. But these characters came to me, and so I just wanted to share them with others. And I still say
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
write the books and then say, well, I'll share it with you and see what you think. But when the families of the hospice patients started to contact me and said,
Mm.
my mom is asking about this book. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, it's not published. Let me come read it.
Yeah.
That's when I said, I really need to get these
Yeah.
published because it was bringing people joy at
Mm-hmm.
the literally the last, stage of their life,
Right.
because it reminded them of when neighbors and community bonded together
Yeah.
and everyone looked out for each other. And more than anything else, the
Mm-hmm.
kindness of, I don't know you. And so in whether it's Delphinium in the Blooming of Delphinium or Cora Matthews in On Moonberry Lake.
Hmm.
I wanted to challenge both characters to say if someone doesn't look like you, talk like you, act like you, and is not in your age bracket, can you love them?
Yeah.
Can you care for them? Can you show them respect? And that is really the essence of both books.
Yeah. Well, and it's so true because, we talk a lot about in the fiction world representation, right?
Mhm.
Which is very important. So I'm not trying to, denigrate anything that's already been done, but you don't have a lot of representation of seniors when you think about it. Um, from the
And when
standpoint
there
of,
is, they're always cranky and in the
right,
corner,
right.
and they hate the boyfriend, or they're angry with the dinner that's being served with them. They're
Yep.
always shown in a really negative way
Hmm.
instead of they're absolute sweethearts.
Right,
They absolutely love connection. They
right.
bloom with connection. They
They do.
literally come
They do.
alive
They do.
with company.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's another myth I'm trying to, shatter. But it's also there's a romance, of course, in this.
Hmm.
My romances as well as my faith thread it's a slow burn.
Hmm.
And it's light because again, this is meant to be a series. And whenever
Yeah.
someone gets to the end and they want it to be absolutely complete, I'm like, well, it's not the end. It's going to continue.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Hmm.
there's just I think as our faith should be a slow burn
Hmm.
in our
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
And so when any reader comes to me and says, well, I wanted her to find this at the end of the book. And I said, so the timeline of this book for Delphinium was 6 weeks. And I said, if you went and said from someone that didn't have faith to
Hmm.
now going, okay, I'm like, how deep would their faith really be after
Right.
6 weeks?
Right.
Like this takes a long time. And this is why I love to immerse myself in the elderly population,
Hmm.
especially because they've had decades to think about
Oh,
this
they
and
have.
decades of
Yeah.
hardships
Right.
to endure.
Hmm.
And when they say, no, but God was with me through all this. And when they talk about the war or the
Hmm.
wars that they fought in, or,
Hmm.
the job loss or the family loss or whatever it is, their examples of faith are so inspiring to me. And so with the characters in the book, when I always have the youngest, I always say, look at who she surrounds herself with.
Hmm.
That is going to be the greatest example of
Hmm.
how to behave, of how to, of faith in her life. Who do
Right.
you surround yourself with?
Right. Right. Well, it is so true. The kids, and when we're recording this, it's just after Halloween, and my kids, preteen, early teens, wanted to go trick-or-treating yet. And I said, you know what? That's fine. But let's do something different this year. I said, instead of going around the neighborhoods trying to get the king size candy bars, I said, let's go to Poppy's retirement community because I know they're having a little bit of a trick or treat session. And it was complete chaos. I'm not going to lie. But all of these seniors are in a room, and you could just go from table to table to table, and they're handing out candy. And some of them were almost confused as what they were doing, and others were like really interested in your costumes. We got to this one gentleman. I'll never forget. It was so much fun. He was sitting there, and he actually rooms very close to my dad, so I know him. And he's kind of what you were describing in a book, right? That when they do get page time, they're a little crotchety, they're a little grumpy, and they don't smile. Well, my theory is they're like that because nobody talks to them, right? So at this point, they're irritated and annoyed because the world has forgotten. He's sitting there with his candy, and I walked up to him and I stood there. And he kind of just looked at me and I said, well, and he goes, well, what? And I said, where's my candy? And he goes, you don't get any candy. And I'm like, no, I know I don't get candy. You know why I don't get candy? And he kind of got this little quirky grin on his face because I was coming back at him. And I said, you know why I don't get candy? And he goes, why? I said, because you're hiding it. I said, I know what you're doing. You're sitting here under the guise of giving candy to little kids. And every time you give them one, you slip one into your shirt pocket. He goes, I do not. And he starts chuckling. And I said, yes, you do. I said, I guarantee you. I said, you get back to your room tonight, you're going to take your sweatshirt off and you're going to have candy all over your floor, aren't you? And you're just trying to sit here making it look like nobody wants to come by you because you want to keep all the candy. He started laughing so
Yeah,
hard. And then
I
he
know.
lifts up his shirt, and sure enough, he had a candy bar tucked in under the hem of a sweatshirt. And he goes, how did you know? I said, because that's exactly what I'll do when it's my turn. But it was just so
I love
fun,
it.
because we forget that when they get to that age, even if there's a mental decline, a memory decline, a
Mhm.
physical decline, they're still like my dad. He's 81. He goes, kind of feel like I'm still 43.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of like he goes, I feel like I'm kind of trapped in this body.
Exactly. And aging is hard. I
It
have this
is.
discussion with my husband all the time. Aging is so hard because there's a part of us that does feel that frozenness in 35 to 45
Yeah.
where we're like, we're always there. We're always there. But
Yeah.
boy, what happens to our body is hard. But when you look at like my neighbors and I reach out to them, they don't care if they're talking about the landscape or your dog or something.
Mm-hmm.
They want connection.
Right. Right. And they
Mhm.
love, I told my kids over and over. I'm passionate about this too because I grew up going to retirement homes and nursing homes all the time. I remember singing in
That's
them.
absolutely how we clicked. I mean,
Yeah,
when you told
yeah,
me that and
yeah.
how you go to your father and visit him, I this is there
I,
we're absolute kindred spirits in this.
oh,
I know
totally,
you
totally.
have a heart for it.
Like if my career, honestly, I told this to my daughter the other day. I said if my career in writing tanks and it's over, I'm not saying I want that to happen. Go buy my books. But if it did, I said I want to come work here.
Yeah,
And she goes, well, Mom, you're not gonna make a lot of money. I said, I don't care because my soul will be so
right,
full. I
right.
said, we spend one day here. And I told my kids, I said, when you go in there, I said, always be respectful, always be kind, but don't be afraid to have fun.
Hmm.
Because I think it's that last part. A lot of times people go in there like, well, we need to be respectful, we need to be quiet. And it's like this library atmosphere. And I found so often when you start giving it and dishing it out, oh, do they dish it back? And it's
Yes.
so much fun.
They're
My
so
kids have so
feisty
much
and there's
fun.
just different, but there's, and to recognize, okay, there's going to be different levels of
Yep,
ability.
yep,
And but there's something, there's a twinkle where they all remember how it used to be,
mm-hmm,
and they're going to be enchanted with children. They're
yeah,
going to be enchanted with anything that looks different because it's just like, I remember that.
yeah,
um in this book, when
mm-hmm,
I wrote it, I wanted all of the characters to have their own personality, which
yep,
they do,
yep.
but I wanted them also to be at different levels of ability. So
Okay,
some could have no problem walking. And there's this one character where she's in a lot of physical pain and she only really walks around using a walker.
mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, I don't know what use I could have.
Oh,
And so Delphinium's like, how would you like to fold towels? And she's like,
yeah,
I would, okay, I'll do that. And I remember growing up, my mom would bring me to a nursing home to visit some people she knew there. And they had this huge table, and literally the cleaning staff would dump all these towels there, and the women would fold the towels just as they did when they were
mm-hmm,
homemakers,
yeah,
and they loved it. They
yeah,
all showed up because, and they didn't care, just little hand towels, and they just wanted to fold them.
mm-hmm,
And there's so much loss
yeah,
that we experience as we age, and
mm-hmm,
it's, loss of family. It might be a
mm-hmm,
spouse,
mm-hmm,
but then loss of home and a loss of, and it's always, it's very lonely to keep moving forward, and you're always adjusting to, I don't have control over this anymore,
right,
and I don't have control over, what I eat. It's served to me, whatever.
mm-hmm.
So this is in the book when they get a little taste of what it's like to rebel. Well, of
I
course they go
love that.
overboard. I
Oh, of
mean,
course,
they go overboard. And I
yeah,
do make it, I mean, they suddenly want a chocolate fountain and salsa dancing and a sushi bar. And they're
ah,
like,
love it.
why can't we have a buffet like they do in Las Vegas? And
Oh my
Delphinium
gosh,
uses this to tell this director,
uh-huh,
she's like, they just want to say, in
Yeah.
what you're trying to create as their home.
Yeah.
Of course, should there be an ongoing masseuse and should you have a spa and do a miniature golf course in the back? No, these are ridiculous requests, but you have to say, where are they
Mm-hmm.
coming from? Listen to these
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And so as he grows as, um, you know, the director of the nursing home, he's absolutely enchanted with Delphinium and this place that she's created where these
Yeah.
seniors feel like they have this voice
Mm-hmm.
and they have so much fun in her shop. And
Mm-hmm.
she can say, you know, I'm sending them out. They're doing little tasks for me. But one of the things I wanted to come across, and I see this all the time in hospice and nursing homes, speech is a motor skill as much as
Yeah.
walking.
Oh, yeah.
And when you do not talk, you start to lose that
Yep.
ability to talk, and
Yep.
it's not as clear,
Yep.
and it's more with effort. And so even with my mom, who is in her 80s, I said, you need to read aloud. You need to read
Mm-hmm.
aloud a magazine, a newspaper. I don't care what it is, but if you
Mm-hmm.
are not using your speech, you are going to lose it as much as walking across the room using a walker and you're like, my body just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
it's hard to grow old, and we have to have absolute compassion. But I wanted to hopefully remind people in the Moonberry books of how precious this population is. And I hope that
Mm-hmm.
um, we just give them more attention and the love they deserve. The greatest compliment I get from reviewers is when someone wrote, I put down the book and I called my nana. And I was like,
Mm.
oh,
That's the
that's what I
best.
wanted. And she said, do
Yes.
you guys do this at your nursing home? Do you have friends like this? Is this what you and your girlfriends do?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I stopped and called my nana. And I wanted to hear stories of what she's done and and
Yeah.
I was like,
That's the best.
there's nothing greater.
Right. Right. Yeah. And bridging that gap between the younger to the older is so important because they are the people who teach us how we should
Hmm.
become.
Hmm.
And if we don't have that, then we're just floundering through life, trying to learn what they've already learned and can tell us a lot of
Exactly.
things and spare us a lot of things. Okay, so with the book, why should somebody who's in their 40s read it? And why should somebody who's in their 70s and 80s read it? How's it going to affect both demographics differently?
I think for people that are in their 30s and
Hmm.
40s and 50s, they like it because there are younger characters in
Hmm.
here, but they get the sense of not only like the main character is always searching for something greater. And
Okay.
a running theme in both books is always family can be found.
Mm,
Family does not have to be
like that.
blood.
Hmm.
And that is really important because I feel like those in their 40s, none of us are no longer living in multi generational homes. Okay.
Right.
A lot of us have moved away and we are not near our parents.
Hmm.
I am thousands of miles away from my siblings. And so you have to create
Hmm.
what is family around you. And it can be your neighbors, it can be your church community where you're like, I'm embracing you and I'm going to look out for you and I'm going to be loyal to you and I'm going to care for you as if you're family. And
Right.
we need to get back to that because we've been so separated.
Yeah.
And so when people wrote to me, they're like, I loved the community and how they were honest with each other and nobody lost their uniqueness. Okay. So I
Hmm.
always say, we can be unified and still unique.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you you don't have to acclimate where you're the same as this person.
Hmm.
Absolutely not. She has nothing in common with any of these people, but they all come together.
Yeah.
And through their differences, they learn to care for each other because of
Hmm.
those differences. They're like, I'm going to
Hmm.
learn from you, but regardless of how different we are. And for the older people, what they love is they see themselves
Hmm.
and they love the respect
Hmm.
and how these other characters listen to them. Because
Yeah.
in on Moonberry Lake, oh, I love the character. Everyone is always writes me about Widgie, but I have to be honest and say I'm Team Kitty. I really am. I love Kitty, and Kitty is in her high 80s,
Mm.
and she her home is situated in the middle of a cemetery, and so she
Oh,
always
I love
goes.
her already.
Yeah, she always goes, and she knows everyone that's buried there, and she goes and talks to them all day long.
Oh, that's so
Okay,
me someday.
I
I'm
know, and she,
so Kitty.
as she is caring for this, but when Cora comes to her with all of her problems,
Hmm.
she does something really smart and she teaches her lessons in story. Okay.
Okay.
And she says, well, there's Beatrice over there, and here's Agatha, and here's this.
Mm-hmm.
And she'll tell them stories of like, this is how this person dealt with it, or this was their personality, and this is what
Sure.
they did. And so I love, and I think a lot of older people, when you sit down and if you went to a senior and said, I have this problem,
Oh, yeah.
they're never going to look at you and say, I have no idea. Like that
Right.
has
Mm-mm.
never been an answer to any person I've asked.
Nope.
They can always go back and say, this is how I survived
Mm-hmm.
poverty. This is
Mm-hmm.
how I survived when I lost my job. This is how I survived when,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that she infuses that wisdom onto her because it is it's something to be cherished and also remember of like call up the person and say this is what I'm struggling with now
Yeah.
because we live in a culture right now of so much anxiety
Yeah.
and that when the seniors were like we worked through it, this is what I did, this is what you had to
Mm-hmm.
do, this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
these were my coping mechanisms. When older people read The Blooming of Delphinium, I was at Target this morning and I always go to these two women that check me out.
Okay.
Their names are Cindy and Kathleen, and I swear I'm going to make them characters in the next book,
I
but they're
love it.
69 and 72.
Okay.
Okay. And they
Perfect.
check me out at Target and they're like, I read your book. I was like, you're so sweet. I always thank people like, thank you so much for even taking the
Yeah.
time because I
Right.
know
Yeah.
time is the
Mm-hmm.
most precious
It
commodity we
is.
have. So I
It
take
is.
that very seriously. I'm not going to waste your time. But I always said, who is your favorite senior in The Blooming of Delphinium? And she's like, Charlie. And Charlie in The Blooming of Delphinium hates to wear pants. Like he's always like,
Okay, that is
put
not
your
as
pants
extreme as
on.
people might believe. People might think
Okay.
that's out of the box. That is so something you find in almost
It is so something
everywhere.
because how
Yes.
many women come home from work and the first thing they do is they want to change, they want to get out of their undergarments. And for
Uh-huh.
men, my dad came home, he wanted to throw those dress pants against the room.
Yep.
There's and so a lot of men are like,
That's
let me just walk
awesome.
around in my boxers, and they're like, Charlie,
Mm-hmm.
put on your pants. But they let him take off his shirt once in a while, and so she's dealing with that. And
Love
when
it.
the director is like, what is it about that man? And she's like, he did that when he had his own home.
Yeah.
He did that. And so when I'm at Target and they're like, we love Charlie, because as soon as she gets home, she's like, I take off my bra, I take
Yep.
my and I'm
Yep.
like, so I think there's a connection. I
There
think
is.
there are first of all, I always have so many characters. That was something I fought for. But to have
Mm-hmm.
13 characters in a book is not typical. It is
No,
not,
it's
but I
not.
create these worlds. And so there's so many different ones that you find your favorite and you glom onto them. You
Yeah.
find your favorite and you're like, my dad did that.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
grandma did
Yeah.
that. Or my grandma talked like that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like I had a grandma that was very stern, very strict, very, she wasn't loving and gushy and all
Mm-hmm.
jelly. She was
Mm-hmm.
definitely not. So I was like, let's have one in there like that. But let's also have one. I love the grandmas that are covered in rhinestones
Oh,
and go by
yes.
glammy and still have the pink lipstick.
Ah,
And I'm like,
yep.
oh my gosh, I love you.
Yep.
It's just
Yep. It's
the
so good
personalities
that,
are only accentuated. So when
yeah.
I was young, someone told me, who you are at 40 is who you are going to be at 80, only exaggerated.
Oh boy, I'm in trouble.
And I have found that to be true. So for everybody going, who you are at 40 is who you will be at 80, only exaggerated. So,
Yep,
if you want
that's
to change
awesome.
something about yourself right now, you better work on it.
Oh, I don't know. I'll maybe make the younger generation deal with me. Yeah, I'll be the 80-year-old that plays dead every morning and then make them come in to find me and then I'll go, boo, I didn't die last night. Success number one.
I can totally see you doing that. I
I
can,
would totally do
that is spot on. 100. Yeah.
that. Oh my gosh, Holly, this is a blast. And I think these books are really important. Just, I mean, they just are so important. And if anyone listening has not already picked up Moonberry Lake or Blooming Delphiniums,
Of Delphinium.
yes, yes, I'll get the title right. You need to pick them up and pick them up because now we are entering a holiday season. And everyone
Yes.
wants to know, what do I get Grandma and Grandpa for Christmas? Well, here you go. This is a good one.
There you go. I get
This is
so many.
it.
The
This
majority of
is
my
it.
emails are from people in their 80s. I have to admit that.
Yeah,
It's so sweet.
I love it.
My oldest reader so far has been 94. And
Oh,
they're
it's
like,
awesome.
they read them in 2 days, which
Yeah,
is just precious. It's
yeah.
absolutely precious to me. But I found that my goodness, for all of those mamas too, you read
Hmm.
them and then pass them on to your mother,
Oh,
grandma. And
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And what a way to connect too, to like have your own
what a
little,
way to connect and talk about
right,
who is your favorite character. And when
right.
they say very
Hmm.
specifically, why is that one?
Hmm.
You will gain insight into
Yep.
who they are. You
And you'll
really
probably
will.
hear about relatives you never knew existed. You'll hear about old Uncle
Hmm.
Frank who used to run around the barn feeding the cows in his boxer shorts.
Yep.
That's the type of story that suddenly comes out and you're like, what? My grandma
I
gave me
I grew up
so
with
many
a
of those
neighbor
stories.
that would I grew up with a neighbor that would only mow his lawn in his pajamas. Every Saturday,
No,
he was in the same pajamas mowing his lawn
that's so
and
funny.
up and down. Mr.
Yep,
Wagner, goodness
yep,
gracious.
yep. Oh, that's awesome. And my grandma would give me the longest lectures because I would throw a Ziploc baggie away. And you don't throw baggies. Do you know that? Do you know that you're not supposed to throw Ziploc baggies away? You have to wash them and then you have to lay them all out on the counter for like a full day so they can dry. Like, Grandma, it's like $3 for a box of plastic. It's okay. Well, I grew up in the Depression
That's
and
right.
you didn't do that type of thing. And she's like, that's $3 a box, $3 a month, $36 a year. Don't you talk back to me, young one. She'd go.
I love it.
So, if you guys don't get anything else from this podcast today, wash your Ziploc bags, wear
There you go.
pajamas while you mow the lawn, don't
Yep.
get mad at Grandpa when he walks around in his boxers, and order on Moonberry Lake and the Blooming of Delphinium because they are must-haves for every library.
And they're so pretty.
They are.
They're so
If for no
pretty.
reason, just buy them so you can stare at the covers.
Just buy them.
Just buy them
Yep.
and stare at the covers. But no, seriously, they are going to make great Christmas presents for everybody. I mean, even think about Sunday school teachers at church, your church secretaries. Do they use the word secretary anymore? I don't know. Maybe they don't. But, you know, think about people you can bless their lives with because that is what Holly is all about. So if you don't want to read Jamie's dark, gory, haunting, depressing novels, read Holly's because they're fun and light and happy.
We are the yin yang.
Yeah,
And
we are.
when we first met, I'm like, we have nothing in common. You would never read my books, but we have bonded so much
I
over the
know.
seniors. I love you.
I
No,
know. I know. I love it. All right. Well, Holly, thank you so much for being with us. And
thank
we'll have you
you.
back
Thank you. Thank you.
again.
Thank you. Always, always. You're a delight.